I was just chilling on the couch, watching whatever show was on, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Curiosity got the better of me, so I picked up. Little did I know, that split-second decision would drag me into a nightmare beyond my wildest imagination. The voice on the other end was all twisted and eerie, sending shivers down my spine. I couldn't quite place it, but there was something deeply unsettling about it. The caller claimed they were coming for me, delivering a bone-chilling threat that turned my blood cold. Fear gripped me like a vice, making my heart race. Panicked, I rushed to find my boyfriend, desperate to share the sinister call with him. Bursting into the living room, I tried to explain, but he brushed it off, convinced it was just a sick joke. He mustered up his macho bravado and stormed outside with a bat, shouting into the night, determined to scare off whoever was messing with us. I pleaded for him to come back inside, my gut screaming that danger was lurking just beyond our doorstep. But he shrugged off my worries, dismissing them with a wave of his hand. Reluctantly, I retreated indoors, feeling a sense of foreboding hanging in the air. Minutes dragged on like hours as I paced the living room, tension thick in the air. Silence settled like a heavy blanket, broken only by the sound of my own anxious breathing. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the stillness, sending chills down my spine. Panic gripped me. Something was seriously messed up. Without thinking twice, I sprinted towards the front door, heart pounding in my chest. And there he stood, looming over my boyfriend's lifeless body. Horror flooded every inch of my being, freezing me in my tracks. He was straight out of a horror flick. Dressed in dark clothes, face hidden behind a twisted mask. That thing gave me the creeps, like something from a twisted nightmare. It had those empty, soulless eyes, staring right through me, sending chills down my spine. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I took off, legs pumping like pistons, desperate to escape this deranged psycho. I raced through the house, my mind spinning with fear, searching for a safe haven. But that lunatic chased after me, relentless as a hound on a hunt. It felt like the walls were closing in, suffocating me with terror. I slammed doors behind me, desperate to buy precious seconds, but deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before he caught up. I needed to find a way out, or else I would become his next victim. Thinking quickly, I gathered my strength and used my legs to push the heaviest thing I could find to barricade the door shut. Finally, shaking like a leaf, I dialed 911 with trembling hands. Holding on to that lifeline, I prayed for help. But then, that psycho stabbed the door with a wicked knife, the blade peeking through. And there it was, that bone-chilling mask, like something straight out of a nightmare. As I waited, time stretched on, the seconds feeling like an eternity. And that's when he struck again. His wicked knife pierced the door with a menacing force. Through the slender crack, I caught a glimpse of his bone-chilling mask, a sight that twisted nightmares are made of. My breath caught in my throat as his masked face peeked through the crack. The mask, an embodiment of terror, bore the unmistakable traits of Ghostface, the notorious icon of horror. Its pallid, deathly white complexion contrasted starkly with the splatters of deep red, reminiscent of fresh blood. The exaggerated, elongated mouth and hollow eyes seemed to swallow any hint of light. He taunted me, his voice dripping with sick pleasure, promising that this nightmare wasn't over. Fear clenched my heart as his threats echoed in the room. But just when hope seemed lost, sirens wail in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. Help was on its way. The police were coming to the rescue. The blaring sirens offered a glimmer of hope, a ray of light piercing through the darkness. I clung to that hope, knowing that soon I would be safe from this deranged tormentor. As the sound of approaching sirens grew nearer, I waited with bated breath. But when the police finally arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the night, there was no sign of Ghostface. He had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the lingering dread of his presence. Confused and shaken, I shared my harrowing encounter with the police, desperate for answers. They searched every inch of the house, every hiding spot, but found no trace of the masked madman. It was as if he had never been there, as if he had faded back into the shadows from which he came. The police assured me that they would continue their investigation, urging me to stay vigilant and report any suspicious activity. Though their presence brought temporary relief, a sense of unease lingered within me. Ghostface was still out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for his next opportunity to strike.
The three of us, Ethan, Jake, and Ryan, decided to rent a beach house for our college vacation, far away from the stresses of assignments, exams, and part-time jobs. Just a serene stretch of ocean view, cool breezes, and the anticipation of creating memories to last us a lifetime. The house was a thing of beauty, spacious and warmly inviting, with large windows that offered uninterrupted views of the azure ocean. We settled in comfortably, the promise of the relaxing vacation just beginning to unfold. Things took a turn when the house phone rang. The unknown caller had a chillingly calm voice, claiming to watch us. Assuming it to be a prank call, we laughed it off, a bit unnerved yet still in high spirits. Shrugging off the prank call, Ryan decided to freshen up. The sound of the shower running was comforting in its normalcy. Jake and I continued our conversation, joking about the phone call, thinking it was perhaps a quirky welcome from the locals. That's when we noticed the shower had been running for too long. Calling out for Ryan yielded no response. It was then the laughter died, replaced by a suffocating silence. The smile faded from Jake's face as we approached the bathroom door. Our knocks met with silence. What we saw in that bathroom will forever be etched in my mind. Ryan, our friend, was dead. The world around us started spinning, each second dragging into an eternity. Our safe haven had turned into a horrifying trap. But who was the murderer? We hadn't seen anyone. Our mind was racing with possibilities. Every shadow seemed threatening, every sound a potential danger. Trapped in a remote beach house with a killer on the loose, Jake and I were left to our devices. The haunting voice over the phone had become our nightmare, as every ring sent chills down our spine. With no help in sight, we were left to survive the night, using our wits to try and unmask the killer, our hearts pounding with the fear of the unknown. Fighting the initial wave of terror, Jake and I searched the beach house for any sign of an intruder. But there was no one. Just silence and the ominous echo of our footsteps. The reality of our friend's lifeless body in the other room weighed heavy on our minds, but we knew we had to pull ourselves together if we wanted to survive. As darkness fell, our isolation became even more palpable. The seemingly never-ending ocean in front of us, the dense, impenetrable woods behind, and the empty road that led to this place. We were completely cut off. We tried calling the police, but the signal was ridiculously poor, the line breaking up so much they couldn't make out our location or what had happened. We were on our own. That's when we saw a dark figure looming outside one of the large windows, barely visible but unmistakably there. A chill shot down my spine. My blood ran cold as a familiar white mask came into view. Ghostface. We'd seen it in those old horror movies. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. Adrenaline surged through our veins as we scrambled away from the window. We needed a plan. We needed to defend ourselves. We managed to barricade the doors and armed ourselves with kitchen knives, the surreal situation making everything feel like a daze. The phone rang again. That chilling voice came back on, toying with us, feeding off our fear. We didn't let it get to us. We had to stay strong. For ourselves. For Ryan. The night wore on with our stalker always there, waiting, watching, periodically disappearing only to show up again, keeping us on edge. We moved from room to room, staying away from windows, trying to think of a way to escape. Jake insisted on going to double-check the barricades. "Stay here, Ethan," he told me, a kitchen knife in his hand, his voice striving for calm. But I could see it, the fear in his eyes. Mixed with determination, but fear nonetheless. I nodded, watching as he ventured down the hallway. Jake's disappearance into the darkness stretched out for what felt like hours. The silence was unbearable, only interrupted by the occasional distant crashing of the waves against the shore. A cold sense of dread wrapped itself around me, whispering chilling promises of what was yet to come. Suddenly, a terrible scream cut through the silence. Jake's voice echoed through the house, turning the blood in my veins to ice. The scream ended abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence that somehow sounded even worse. Adrenaline coursed through me as I raced down the hallway, the knife gripped tightly in my hand. I turned the corner to find a horrifying scene. Ghostface standing over Jake's lifeless body. The monstrous figure looked up at my entrance, and for the first time, I saw Ghostface for myself. The pallid, ghostly mask was splattered with crimson, and the sight of it sent chills down my spine. The hollow eyes behind the mask seemed to bore into me, and I felt a surge of pure terror. With a primal roar, Ghostface lunged at me, his bloody knife reflecting the faint moonlight that streamed in through the window. My heart pounded in my chest as I sidestepped his attack, fear propelling me to action. Jake was dead. The harsh reality of that fact spurred me to fight back. I was alone now, trapped in a house with a masked killer. As I dodged another strike, I realized that if I didn't survive this night, no one would ever know what had happened to us. The deadly dance continued, my body moving on instinct. Each attack from Ghostface seemed more ferocious than the last, his twisted pleasure at the hunt evident in every move. But I was not about to go down without a fight. I was determined to survive, to escape from this hellish nightmare. I narrowly dodged another swing from Ghostface, feeling the whoosh of air as the blade passed alarmingly close to my face. My heart pounded in my chest, and my mind raced with possibilities of how to survive. Suddenly, I saw it, an open window leading out into the night. This was my chance. Ignoring the fear that gripped me, I made a run for it, my breaths coming out in ragged gasps. Ghostface lunged at me just as I reached the window, and I felt a hot streak of pain as the knife grazed my arm. I ignored it, the adrenaline masking the worst of the pain, and flung myself through the open window, landing with a harsh thud on the sand below. I forced myself to stand, pushing past the pain, and began to run as fast as my legs would carry me. I didn't dare look back, the image of Ghostface looming over Jake's lifeless body etched into my mind. In the distance, I could see the lights of a neighboring house. My only hope. If I could reach it, maybe I could call for help. Maybe this nightmare would finally be over. As I neared the house, I chanced to glance over my shoulder, only to find Ghostface emerging from our rental house. His figure bathed in the cold moonlight. He started to give chase, but I was too close to the neighboring house for him to catch me now. I pounded on the door, shouting for help. The door swung open, an elderly couple appearing, their faces full of concern. I quickly explained the situation, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush. They quickly ushered me inside, locking the door behind them. The police arrived not long after, their sirens cutting through the silent night. The elderly couple comforted me as I recounted the horrifying ordeal, the reality of the situation sinking in. I survived. I escaped. But at what cost? My friends were gone, their lives stolen in a gruesome game by a masked monster. I knew my life would never be the same again, living with the memories of this night forever seared into my mind.
My friends and I decided to have a weekend getaway at a secluded cabin in the woods. Leah, Sydney, and I arrived at the cabin eager to bask in the tranquility of nature. The dense forest surrounded us. It was a reminder that we were far away from the everyday life of our busy hometown. We settled into the cozy cabin, seeking respite from the world outside. As we gathered around the crackling fireplace, conversations filled the air, and our voices were full of anticipation. We shared stories, reminiscing about our lives, dreams, and fears. Laughter intertwined with the flickering firelight, creating a sense of comfort and camaraderie. Night fell, casting an eerie darkness over the cabin, enveloping us in an unsettling stillness. The ringing phone shattered the silence, its tone filled with malice. Fear gripped my heart as I listened to the chilling words on the other end. I huddled with Leah and Sydney, our voices trembling, seeking comfort in each other's presence. Then it happened. The door swung open with a bone-chilling creak, revealing a figure shrouded in darkness. My breath caught in my throat as I fixed my gaze on him. He wore a torn, black hooded cloak that billowed ominously around him, emanating an aura of malevolence. His mask, a terrifying visage, concealed his identity behind an expressionless facade. The pale, featureless face sent shivers down my spine. Hollow eye sockets and a twisted, open-mouthed grimace adorned the smooth, ghostly white surface. The mask seemed to taunt us, hinting at the horrors that lay beneath. In that horrifying moment, we bore witness to the merciless attack on Leah. Ghostface sprinted towards her with a terrifying speed, his knife glinting menacingly in the dim light. Leah's eyes widened in sheer terror as he closed in on her, his intentions clear. With a swift, brutal strike, he plunged the blade into her defenseless body. The sickening sound of tearing flesh and Leah's agonized cries pierced the air, mingling in a chorus of horror. Blood sprayed in gruesome marks, staining the walls and floor, as Leah's life slipped away. Her vibrant spirit extinguished, leaving behind a lifeless shell that embodied the weight of our shattered hopes. The brutality of her death etched itself into my mind, an image I could never erase. Shock paralyzed us, rendering us helpless in the face of this unspeakable evil. Sydney and I stood frozen, consumed by fear and disbelief. The realization of the imminent danger enveloped me like a suffocating fog, propelling me into a frantic fight for survival. But before we could react, Sydney's trembling form stumbled and crashed to the floor. Her cries of pain mingled with the chaos that unfolded around us. Ghostface, reveling in his sadistic power, turned his attention to her. I watched in horror as he towered over Sydney, his presence suffocating, his knife poised to strike once more. With a cold, menacing voice, Ghostface taunted Sydney, a cruel smile hidden behind the haunting mask. Before she could gather her strength and rise, he lunged at her, stabbing repeatedly with unrelenting force. Each vicious plunge of the knife was met with Sydney's anguished screams, the room echoing with her pain. Blood pooled around Sydney's broken body, staining the floor with a crimson hue. The weight of our collective terror threatened to crush me as I grappled with the horrors before my eyes. At that moment, our world shattered, and the harsh reality of our situation solidified. I found myself trapped in a nightmarish dance of survival, where the only rhythm was the symphony of death orchestrated by Ghostface. The room spun around me, my senses clouded by a haze of horror. Ghostface loomed over us, an embodiment of malevolence, ready to consume my very soul. As Sydney's cries grew fainter, my determination to escape burned brighter, fueling a desperate instinct to survive. The room seemed to blur as Ghostface stood over Sydney's lifeless body, his menacing presence suffocating the air. A surge of adrenaline coursed through my veins, urging me to escape this nightmare. Fear battled with determination as I sought a way out of this living hell. With trembling steps, I backed away from the gruesome scene, my mind racing for a plan. Every creak of the floorboard seemed to amplify the weight of our terrifying predicament. I knew that time was running out, that I had to find a way to survive the relentless pursuit of this sadistic killer. The cabin, once a sanctuary of peace, now transformed into a labyrinth of fear. I navigated the dimly lit rooms, my senses heightened to the slightest sound or movement. Every shadow morphed into a potential threat, and I moved with cautious steps, my heart pounding in my chest. The chilling knowledge that Ghostface could be lurking around any corner fueled my determination to survive. I searched for a weapon, something to even the odds in this deadly game. My hands trembling, I grasped a heavy crowbar, its cool metal providing a small sense of security. As I ventured deeper into the darkness, The weight of my friends' deaths bore heavily upon me. Their lifeless faces flashed before my eyes, their voices echoing in my ears. I felt their spirits urging me to press on, to fight against the evil that had torn them from this world. Suddenly, a door creaked open, and my heart skipped a beat. I found myself face to face with Ghostface, his mask an embodiment of pure malevolence. The twisted grin etched upon the mask sent chills down my spine, a grotesque caricature of a smile that held no mirth or warmth. A surge of adrenaline propelled me backward as Ghostface lunged at me, his blade gleaming with deadly intent. I swung the crowbar with all my might, connecting with a sickening thud against his arm. He recoiled in pain, but his determination was not broken. My survival instincts pushed me to the brink of exhaustion. I fought back, my body bruised and battered but driven by a fierce will to survive. Time seemed to lose all meaning as the struggle continued, the fight for my life becoming an all-consuming obsession. The haunting mask of Ghostface seemed to mock me, an ever-present reminder of the horrors I had witnessed. In a moment of opportunity, as Ghostface's guard momentarily faltered, I seized my chance. Summoning every ounce of strength and courage, I struck a final blow with the crowbar, landing a direct hit to his masked face. He stumbled backward, his hold on the knife loosening. It was my chance to escape. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I sprinted towards the exit, my breath ragged and my heart pounding. The cabin's door swung open, welcoming me into the night air. I ran for my life, never looking back, leaving behind the scene of unimaginable horror as I fled, haunted by the memory of my friends' brutal deaths.